I've got a quick question to start with, and then I'll open up to the floor. Brent, really enjoyed your presentation, and there was a common thread between everyone else as well that the industries, every industry has been disrupted in some way by digital, and the example that you gave of My Way, which is DHL kind of disrupting their own business model and cannibalising their own business before someone else does is really interesting. Just wondering if the panel can think of any Australian businesses that are doing that. So taking a bit of a chance, seeing that digital is going to, in some way, cannibalise and eat up their market share, and so they're doing that themselves through technical innovation. So open to anyone with an Australian example.
I'll kick off. One of the ones that we personally worked on I thought was great, bit of a plug, but was the AusPost QR code app, which is quite amusing given the video of self-printing QR codes. But I think lots of people have seen QR codes fail because they got slapped on every piece of advertising to kind of have the appearance of looking somewhat digital. But basically what the app did was kind of tapped into that insight about the fact that people, when they're sending mail, often want to send a personal message that goes with it. So you could basically scan a QR code, almost sort of Vine style, record a 15-second video that went with it, and that was on the outer envelope of mail when it arrived. So it was a great, particularly given it launched during the gift-giving season, it was a great way to send, personal messages for families. And you can see how that type of application for, Post, which is kind of has a long, steeped history, doing a really innovative thing around that, I think, is a great example of where that utility comes to bear, and actually is quite a fruitful use of QR codes.
Any other examples?
I think Australian retailers are probably doing quite well at it, or starting to do well at it, in terms of their endless aisle approach. So it's things that wouldn't normally be situated in a Westfield or within a shopping centre, such as a hardware store. And what we're finding with those is that it's bringing the store to the people. So we know that people are located, frequenting these types of venues, and it's a case of not stocking everything there, but it's giving you a means to be able to access it and have it either delivered or creating these bespoke pick-up points as well, which is kind of interesting.
Okay, great. Before we go to the audience, I've got one more question. I'll just hog the mic while I'm here. Scott, that was a really funny video that you played, sort of a bit of a piss take on technology leading ahead of the idea. But then, Roger, you gave some examples from South by Southwest, and I was there, and there are a whole lot of brands that are definitely just doing innovation and technology for the sake of it. Oreo's 3D printing cookies is a good example. So if putting technology ahead of an idea is a bad thing, why are Oreos and Subway and brands like that doing it?
I mean, in my view, it's really simple. I think when people look to use technology as the idea, and here's a really simple example. It's like the brief that comes in that says, oh, we want to be on a social platform, we're not on Pinterest yet. Why? Having an understanding of what the business principle is, and again, going back to examples like Small Business Saturday was so great because there was something in it for businesses, something in it for consumers, and Amex basically wrapped everything around it to tie it together, so they became a facilitator. So in my mind, the 3D, GoPro, whatever kind of versions of it are where you get distracted by the technology versus using it for practical application. So ask yourself, what business problem you're solving, what job are you doing for your customers, and what's your permission to play. If technology brings that together, you've probably got a reasonably good formula. But yeah, there's tons of stuff out there that misses the mark.
I think that's really good advice, but can someone else maybe explain why Oreos did 3D printing cookies at South by?
Yeah, the marketing director is completely nuts. He's a guy called Bonin Boff, and if you ever get the opportunity to check him out on YouTube, he's completely crazy and very entertaining. But I think it's a great example of just kind of demonstrating how brands can reach out to their audiences in innovative ways. I don't think that's a scalable kind of project. It's a great way of shifting perceptions of a fast goods kind of
cookies.
Cookies, yeah.
Is that creative director the guy with the big hair, the Australian guy? Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah, he's nuts.
All right, I'll ask the audience for any questions. There's one back here. Sorry, excuse me.
Good morning. My name is Antonio Calero. I I would like to know how could we remain competitive in a global market when some of these advertising products are not rolled out in the whole world at the same time. I have, for example, one example with Facebook. It's not that Phil, it's not a question for you, it's for everyone. But these custom audiences or website custom audiences, they have been rolled out in the States first, then Canada. By the time they arrived to Australia, we were like 6 months behind some of the companies competing against us in other markets. And same thing is happening with Google or with other companies offering these advertising products. So I'd like to know how, in a global market, how could we remain competitive when other markets are clearly ahead using this technology? Thank you.
I'll jump in on that. One of my favorite statements from a client is, we want to be a beta partner. We want beta. We want to be there. We want to be right there. And after, whether or not they've ticked off all the right questions around why, do I have permission to play, what's my business outcome and objective, they just go, I want beta. All I can tell you with beta, and this is, I think, true across, this isn't, anything that's new is be careful what you wish for. Because it requires a lot of oversight, and it will invariably entail learning as well. For an organization that we've got posters all up over our campus around fail harder and things like that, because we believe that. And to not necessarily to the Oreo example, but we also know that a lot of great innovations came out of just chucking stuff against a wall, and there may not have been a fully vetted consumer business case for them, but in many cases there are. So I think we've got a couple of really good recent examples where we're advocating very, very hard for the Australian market to be one of the lead international markets for rollout. So, and a couple of very recent ones that have been announced. Advertising on Instagram. So Australia will be the first international markets, along with Canada, UK, to do that, and our premium video offering as well. So increasingly, for a lot of the reasons and the stats that were shared earlier, this is a voracious, not just digital, but mobile market, and our organizations recognize that. So, but we're lean, so we have to make sure that wherever we're running those new things, that we've got resources very close to clients and agency partners to work with them through the rapid iteration process that makes them successful. And so there is a limitation to that.
Anybody else have a perspective on how, when Australia doesn't necessarily get the latest in media tech or whatever it might be, how we can compete globally? No.
I mean, my other thing to that is we are lucky from the perspective of, there's two ways of that. We are a great startup market, as viewed by the US, because we have a lot of similar trends. So there is appetite, and I would say we're lucky from the perspective of we punch significantly above our weight. Sure, a $200 million budget has some advantages when you've got 330 million people. But I think innovation, the whole thing about the future of digital is you actually don't need vast budgets to do it. You'd be amazed at some of the things that are created, with relatively low budgets. So really, I think the thing for us is just to think about, New Zealand's a great market that always pushes, ahead, given its size and scale of budgets, because of the bravery is behind it, which I think exactly to your point of, look, if the bravery and the craziness and crazy hair is there, and you put the right people around it, great, but it comes at a cost, and there are things to consider for businesses as to whether they want to go with that. As most people have discovered with social, people now have a voice, so they will respond back. So you just need to make sure you're willing to kind of measure your risk and appetite for innovation.
Great. Another question from the audience? Okay, while you think of another question, we've still got about 5-10 minutes before we break for coffee. I've got one for Philip. So I'm sure you're going to have a well-rehearsed answer for this, but it's been in the press a lot lately about so brands have spent a lot of time and money building up their own likes, for example, Facebook engagement, and they've seen a real notable drop in organic reach on Facebook. So Facebook's response has been, from what I've been reading in the press, is, well, you should pay for ads. They're not free. So, is there a way? There's probably a lot of marketers in the audience who have spent the last 3 or 4 years building up that organic reach, what's your advice to them for, I mean, apart from spend money with Facebook, which is a good idea, how can they, without spending money on Facebook, use that audience to reach the Facebook community?
Spend money on Facebook. Now, look,
On mobile.
I think there's a couple of things. I probably want to amplify a little bit more on why this is happening, and I think that anyone who has a page, monitors a page, manages a page, has probably seen some impact on your organic reach over the past, there's been sort of a couple of episodes, if you like, over the past 9 months or so. And fundamentally, this is not about ad sales. This is about greater traffic. The amount of traffic, the amount of referral traffic we're seeing to media sites such as BBC, such as The Economist, such as others, in addition to all the, sort of quote-unquote listicles that are out there. That's creating a tremendous amount of additional traffic. People on the platform, there's more of them, they're spending more time. Average Australian Facebook users check in 14 times a day. And they're sharing more, they're uploading more, and there's a lot of the connected app environment. So if you're on Spotify and you're playing a song, if you haven't opted out of the feature to share that, that is passively sharing back on onto your timeline. So we're trying to make some course corrections to do that. The simple truth is that for anyone in this room who logs on to their news feed, at any point in time, there's anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 options of what could be at the top of your news feed at that time. Now multiply that on average by 14 times a day. Now multiply that by 1.28 billion people on the platform. And you start to get a sense of how hard the algorithm has to sweat to make sure that you're getting the content that you want in your platform. So it's a massive challenge, and it's growing greater. Probably what I would say to marketers full stop is please take heed, and there were a few presentations that touched on this today. The quality of content and creative we see it going up in fits and spurts. It is the absolute decider, and people will vote real time whether they like your content or not, and so that's what's going to drive it. Great content on Facebook is just great content. So invest long and hard in that. If you're a creative agency and there's another digital agency involved and there's a media agency involved, the clients that we're working best with, like a Commonwealth Bank and some of the stuff we did with the Cricket for them, is where all those parties get together at the outset and they start around one idea. And everyone's building against that. And that both organic and paid content will have incredible cut-through as a result.
Yeah, it's coming on that. I think we're living in an increasingly cynical world, fragmenting world where the newest, best, quickest, shiniest thing is kind of what's attracting a lot of marketing dollars, and that's great. And innovation, I'm all for innovation, but I think there are some fundamental truths about how audiences and resonate around brands and brands they trust, and trust is an incredibly important element to how we at the BBC kind of see the world, and the fact that it's not just about bringing innovation for innovation's sake. It's really about how you retain and develop and foster and nurture a relationship with your audience over many years, and that entails consistency. That entails doing everything right in a really excellent fashion on an ongoing basis. So I think, reach is not, everything. It's got to be about how you engage with your audience, how frequently they're returning, how often they're sharing your content, and I think that's a really sort of important part that is often missed in the consideration for different brand objectives. The amount of times I get briefs that are coming in that are genuinely looking for media firsts, with 48 hours notice, by the way, is
Game changers.
Oh, you're doing well then.
Yeah, exactly. The industry is moving in a direction where it's looking for competitive differentiation, often within the agency groups that are bringing those briefs, because they want to differentiate their offering. Was my mic off then? Sorry, I don't know if anyone could hear me. But so I think we also have to retain the fact that audiences come back to brands that they trust. And there is an incredible value in aligning with that space.
Just adding to that, like what I was showing before, I think if we set up an overall framework for testing things out, I think we kind of have in the industry the idea that we'll test 5% of our budget, or we'll innovate on 3% of our budget. But actually everything that we're doing should have a question that we're looking to answer off the back of it. And it doesn't have to be bleeding edge, it can be stuff that we're doing ongoing. So on a lot of these different platforms, if we're testing out different content and seeing what works relating to business objectives, I think that's kind of the name of the game, to show that we're progressing in a specific direction.
Yeah, just one last point. I think when it comes to what drives engagement with the brand and content, a couple of questions when we workshop with clients. There's a couple of things we generally point out or ask them about. This is. We always ask them ask them to take the Morgan Freeman test, and what the Morgan Freeman test is simply, if you all close your eyes, just go for it. If you're asleep, it's easy. Close your eyes and just picture Morgan Freeman saying something like Z Watinejo or Andy Dufresne or something like that. You'll immediately get a picture of Morgan Freeman, what his voice sounds like, and that resonance. When people see a post from you, when you're in newsfeed or when you're in other platforms, what is that voice, and what purpose does it have when it speaks to me? And the other litmus test, not to make it about the focus group of the few, is when you're thinking about a post, you think, is this something I'd actually want to see, read, share, watch? And I think if you're really honest with ourselves, you'll see. I think it's getting a lot better, but I still think there's a lot of brands out there that are just chucking stuff up there. And we all have friends like that, people who just chuck stuff up there and all of that. Don't be that friend as a brand. Think sometimes measure twice, cut once is good counsel.
Great. Got time for another couple of questions down here.
Hi there, my name's Renee. I'm kind of just following on from you, Philip. Just kind of wondering about what success means for the brands. I've worked heaps in social media, and I'm just kind of curious about with the Amnesty International thingy, and was it 27,000 shared and signed up, or? Yeah,
they had. I think they had a 5-fold increase in signups over the previous period. So that was one of the core objectives.
Yeah, I'm just sort of always curious as is it sort of happiness in the fact that loads and loads of people are just sharing and seeing what you have, or is the happiness in the actual number of people who are signed up in your cause and on your database, kind of thing? What were they most happy with?
Yeah, with both. I mean, being elevating the discussion is one, but getting more people signed up, signing petitions as well, were also business objectives that were set up for that specific campaign. I think the first question we ever have with any client, and any brief we get that doesn't have a core business objective with a measurable outcome, we'll just return it right back and say, what do you actually want to achieve? I focus most of my time in the retail industry, which is highly measurable and highly reactive, which is a nice way of saying if yesterday's sales suck, pull the promotion. We work really hard to measure. We link our campaigns with point of sale, in addition to stated behavior, like the research study we saw before, which is great. But what we know is that if we can't link the activity to specific outcomes, we're on the outside looking in of the overall media spend. So we have to prove ourselves a lot harder. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it, to be honest. All we ask is that all marketing be held as accountable as we are. So.
Great. One more question. Here we go.
Hi. Hello. My name's Dan. I've read a number of articles over the last few weeks that claim that audiences have learnt to ignore traditional display advertising online. My question is what's the future of traditional on-site display advertising, and how do we communicate its success or failures back to our clients?
I think it comes down to great creativity. And if you produce a piece of work that is genuinely interesting, engaging, entertaining, then it's worthy of getting some viewability around it. If, on the other hand, it's just banal whitewash, it's going to be ignored, and rightly so, and so it should be. So I think there is a huge amount of emphasis on understanding the audience, the context, and bringing creative craft to bear in those areas. And I think, it's still, we've seen from the statistics, it's still a very valuable way to communicate. And it has value. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I think the industry will evolve. It is evolving. We know that native advertising and the ability to bring different content in different ways in a truly native fashion, depending on the platform, is evolving very rapidly. And for different sort of media platforms, we're a traditional news organisation, so that presents challenges for us in the way we do that. We're experimenting with lots of different ways of working with brands to bring their content stories, to tell their narrative in interesting ways that really engage with an audience. But to do that in ill-conceived ways that kind of are overly commercialised is actually counterproductive. So I think to your initial point, display advertising still has great value, but it's got to drive great creativity, and I think we're in an evolving market where brands want to kind of go beneath that as well, and there are multiple layers to that, and there are different metrics and different objectives that have to be satisfied.
Great. Join me in saying thank you to our 5 panellists.